Hello Africa and surrounding islands, bonjour, jumbo, and welcome to the brand new Lucky Man Beer Powder YouTube channel, where today we'll be talking you through the mixing instructions of making Lucky Man Beer Powder at home. Just very quickly, for those of you living in French-speaking countries, we have had this video translated into French, so please be sure to turn your subtitle captions on. So if you're watching this video, hopefully you have a packet of Lucky Man beer mix in your hand. Effectively, what is Lucky Man? Lucky Man is a proprietary blend, a secret blend of yeast nutrients, vitamins and minerals and food grade chemicals that allows you to make beer from granulated sugar. Now the benefits of that are numerous. Lucky Man is extremely fast fermenting. It is extremely high in alcohol. It's very, very easy to make. It's convenient. It tastes delicious and it's extremely affordable. So to make Lucky Man beer, you do need a few ingredients and utensils, and I'm going to take you through them very shortly now. Obviously we'll explain in a bit more detail as we go along, but the short version is this. You need a 20-litre container. You need a measuring jug if you have one at home. You need bread yeast, also known as baker's yeast. You need sugar, and you need 1 packet of Lucky Man beer mix. Now that's the short version. Let's go into a bit more detail as to why exactly we use what we use and the utensils that we require. Okay, so let's start with the container. You can see that I've chosen to use this container today. It's my personal preference choice. You do not need to use this particular type of container. You can use a 20-litre bucket if you have one on hand. You do not necessarily go out and buy this particular type of container, but there are 2 important things to take note of. Number 1, your container should always be clean, and number 2, you should be certain that the container can take 20 litres or probably just a little bit more. Right, next on the list is water, and there are a few important points that we do need to note about the water. Okay, firstly, the quality of water. The good news is that you do not need to use bottled water to make Lucky Man beer. The expense is not required. You can use water from your taps, you can use municipal water, you can use water, for example, from a borehole or a well. Just be careful that you do not use water that is too dirty. The second point is that you do require warm water to make Lucky Man beer. Now, what is the definition of warm? Well, let's go into that. Technically, warm water is defined as anything between 33 to 38 degrees Celsius. Now, if you do not have a thermometer at home to measure the temperature of the water, please do not panic, it is not required. Warm water is somewhere between cold and hot, and the best way to describe warm water is the temperature of water that you would use, for example, to bathe a baby. So not too cold and not too hot. If you use water that is too cold, you will not activate the yeast. A number of you viewers sitting at home right now already know that to make alcohol or to make your own bread, you need to activate the yeast with warm water. Again, on the other side, if you use water that is too hot, you're going to kill the yeast, and again you're going to get a slow, sluggish fermentation that does not maximize the yield or the amount of alcohol produced. Okay, so 2 very important points there. Right, next on the list is yeast. The good news, again, is that you do not need any specialized yeast whatsoever. You are freely available to use baker's yeast, also known as bread yeast, that is available in any African country, at any shop, at any store. It comes in these small sachets, and the reason why I've said 40 to 44 grams on the mixing instructions on the back of the Lucky Man packet is that I understand that, or in South Africa, for example, each small sachet of yeast is 10 grams. Whereas I believe in some West African countries, a small sachet of yeast is 11 grams. Be that as it may, don't panic, it's not a problem. You just need to use 4 packets, and that needs to equate to about 40 to 44 grams of bread or baker's yeast. Another very important point to make about the yeast is that if you have previously opened a packet of yeast, for example, a couple of days ago or maybe last week, that yeast is now considered old and not fresh. Okay, so please be sure to use the freshest yeast that you can possibly get your hands on where the sachets are sealed. And there's a very good reason for that. To maximize the yield of alcohol, to get the best flavor profile, you do need to use the freshest yeast. Fresh yeast equals good quality beer, and it also means a good quality beer in the shortest amount of time. Next on the list is sugar. I often get asked what sugar to use. Do I use brown sugar? Do I use white sugar? To be honest, the results are very, very similar. I personally like to use brown sugar myself. Brown sugar for me results in a slightly better color profile and a slightly better flavor profile, okay? But that being said, if white sugar is cheaper in your particular country, then I would advise that you use white sugar or whatever you can afford. Lastly on the ingredients list is 1 packet of Lucky Man, like I previously explained. So, let's get to the fun part. Let's start making our Lucky Man beer. First things first, without further ado, let's start filling this container with 20 liters of reasonable quality warm water. I'm just going to pour it out of my measuring jug here, but you can obviously use whatever jug you have available at home. So this jug measures 2 liters. Obviously, to make 20 liters, I use 10 of these to get to the 20 liters of warm water in my container. Okay, that was easy. We've now filled our container with 20 liters of, remember, warm water. And now, again, it's very easy to follow on from here. All we need to do now is add all the ingredients together. So the yeast, the sugar, and the packet of Lucky Man. In no particular order, you can add it as you wish. Today, I'm going to start with the yeast. So I'm going to be adding 4 packets, 4 times 10 grams of baker's or bread yeast. And remember what we said earlier, the fresher the better. So please use sealed sachets of baker's yeast. You should make sure you get every little ounce out. Packet number 2, packet number 3, and lastly, packet number 4. So that, for me, because I'm using a South African brand, is now 40 grams of baker's yeast. Okay. Again, like I said earlier, if you happen to have these small sachets which weigh 11 grams, no problem. You will be adding a total of 44 grams. It will not negatively affect the outcome of the beer in any way or form. So please just go ahead. Next, the sugar. I'm just going to throw that in to the mix and be sure not to spill. And there's your 2 kilograms of sugar in. And then lastly, we're going to add the magic. We're going to add the 1 sachet of the Lucky Man beer mix. This is where the magic happens, okay? So don't spill a drop. And there we go, simple as that. So those are all your ingredients into the water. Now they are not directly, immediately absorbable, so we do have to put a little bit of effort into dissolving them into the water, and that's going to happen with some manual manpower. Now, as you can see, I can't get a spoon into this particular container, so I'm going to have to use my muscles and shake the beer up myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this up, and I'm going to give this a good shake. Again, if you're using a bucket at home, you can obviously use a spoon to mix everything. It is very, very important, and this is a very important point, that you make sure that all the granulated sugar is dissolved into the water, okay? And the reason for that is because the yeast cannot consume and convert the sugar into alcohol if it's still in solid forms. It needs to be all dissolved and into what's called a sugar wash. Okay, let me do my gym for the day and give this away. Next. Right, so that's the Lucky Man mix with all the ingredients. There's not much else to do, to be honest. All the ingredients have been mixed. Again, just to reiterate the point, everything needs to be dissolved into the water. Now, one of the most important points, I've used this lid to mix the sugar wash, just to avoid anything spilling out. But what you want to do is you want to leave this off. You do not want to put the lid on and keep it airtight for two very, very good reasons. Okay, so when the yeast is fermenting, it is converting sugar into alcohol, and it's also a byproduct of that process is carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide needs to be released. We don't want to build it with gas. And also yeast, baker's yeast, just like us, breathes oxygen, so it needs oxygen to breathe. And we're going to keep that lid off to let oxygen into the process. Okay? And now, once everything is mixed in and the lid, remember, is kept off, you pretty much just let it do its thing for about 36 hours, depending on the weather. Okay? Now, to make sure that the process is working, what I normally do is I wait for about 60 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes, let's call it 75 minutes. And I come back and I just put my ear to the container, and what you will see and what you will hear is the yeast starting to activate, and it will start processing, start converting that sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide. And what you will hear is a fizzing sound. Okay, it'll start to fizz. Okay, now that's a very good sign. That means the yeast is happy and it's starting to get to work. Okay, now the key to good quality beer, good quality Lucky Man beer, is to keep the yeast as warm as possible. Not too hot, not too cold. Okay. Now, if you do live in a region where you do feel that the nights are getting pretty cold, or the weather is not very good and it's cold, what I like to do, and this does work, is wrap a blanket around the container. I know it looks a bit ridiculous, but remember, we are looking for the best quality beer with the highest alcohol content at the end of the day. So at night, what I normally do is wrap this blanket around the container, and that just helps to insulate it a bit and keep the beer warm, keep the yeast warm, and keep the fermentation at its peak level. Okay, because that's key to good quality beer. If the yeast is happy, you're going to get a really good end product at the end of the day that people will be extremely happy with. Okay, we've come to the end of the 36-hour process. The Lucky Man is now ready to consume. You'll notice that if you put your ear to this opening of the container, you will hear, or you will not hear any more fizzing. Okay, so that basically means that the yeast has converted all that sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide. There's nothing left for it to eat. And then what happens is that the yeast, with its work done, it dies and it sinks to the bottom of the container. There's nothing more you can do. The beer is ready to drink. Okay. Now, with that in mind, with the yeast and some of the flavorant sinking to the bottom, you do need to make sure that you give the Lucky Man, the container, a good shake before you serve it, because that tends to incorporate the yeast and the flavor. If you don't do that, unfortunately, the first couple of servings do come across as slightly weak and watery. Now, on the front label of the package, you will notice that is written Tavern Pack. Okay, so this makes 20 liters, and it's called a Tavern Pack for a very good reason. Okay, so you can make Lucky Man privately and consume it yourself at home. You're more than welcome to do that, but please bear in mind there's a very good economic opportunity for you to make some money, some extra money on the side. Okay, so if you are perhaps unemployed, if you're at home or you're working part-time, this is a very good way of making some extra money. Okay, so you can make Lucky Man as much or as little as you want, and you can sell it to customers that come and request it. Please note that it does come in 3 flavors. At the moment we have mango, pineapple and ginger beer. So there you have it, ladies and gents. That's how you make Lucky Man beer. I hope I haven't confused you. If you do have any questions, I will be checking the channel daily. If you do have any questions or concerns, please write them in the comment section below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Very simple, very easy to make. It's a 36-hour process, and the end result is a high flavor, high alcohol beer that is specifically designed for the African market. So with your beer ready, pour it out, give it a shake, pour it out into a half liter or a 1 liter container, whatever you want. Enjoy it, be careful, it is quite strong, it'll get you dancing pretty quickly, but please enjoy it and have an amazing time. Thank you.